Right then, we're back again. Episode 17, 16, 17, something like that. The Hodling Room, the world's greatest and only Bitcoin Book Club podcast. How are we doing, Mike?
Great. How are you?
Very good indeed. I was just saying, I've been listening to the Monero podcast. You ever listen to it?
No.
Um,
Can't say I have.
I don't know if it's the only Monero podcast, but it was. I've been listening to it just because the Monero people seem very knowledgeable on the whole privacy tech, freedom tech. So, I've been wanting to learn things like Graphene OS and just being a little bit more privacy conscious, security conscious, and they seem super knowledgeable on that. I mean, I'm not a Monero fan, but it's definitely an interesting podcast. They basically say that Monero is what Bitcoin wishes it was, in terms of privacy and,
To be
peer-to-peer
fair,
transactions and stuff.
out of all the altcoins, like I do understand Monero the
Really?
most. Like as in it, well, not as in personally understanding the most. I understand what they're trying to do
The
most.
ethos
Like,
behind it, yeah.
yeah, it makes the most sense to me out of all of them.
Yeah. It's a completely different, it's still proof of work from what I can see, but it's a completely different kind of cryptographic world. I don't fully understand it, but I think the Monero selling point is that it's completely private, completely anonymous. You can't see at all how much somebody's sending, who you're sending it to. It's completely opaque in terms of blockchain. But
Yeah.
as far as I could tell, it's not that secure either, because I started listening to it a few weeks ago when they were talking about a 51% attack. There was a company, I can't remember what they were called now, but basically, Monero works. It doesn't use ASIC miners like Bitcoin does. It just uses normal computers, which is intentional because, as far as I know, like the developers didn't want it to become some kind of like corporatized, big factories and farms full of miners. They wanted everybody to be able to use it and mine it on their own computer.
Mm-hmm.
But by the looks of it, there was a company which managed to do
Cubic.
Cubic. That was it. Yeah, they managed to do a
Just
51%
Googled it.
attack. But they were speculating on the podcast that they managed to kind of like, what's the word? Like, not hack, but kind of like use an ASIC miner to mine Monero in order to steal the hash rate. So a bit of something dodgy around there. But then this Cubic company said that they did a chain reorganization, and I think they said it happened twice. But now, I listened to the latest one today. They said that's dust has settled on that now, because it looks like Cubics ran out of money, or they've stopped doing it, or something like that. I don't know, but the whole thing to me seemed a little bit, they seemed quite nervous with it. That they were talking on it. They were saying, okay, well, if this is it for Monero, it was good while it lasted, but we'll go and do something else.
Yeah.
But it seemed to still be going on with it. It's an interesting project, definitely.
Yeah, no, I definitely, it makes sense. Like I say, yeah, I just think the whole privacy thing, just from a lot of the discussion we had in the last podcast around, could government take it and all of that side of things, it just makes so much sense, doesn't it? If it's totally private and anonymous, then
Yeah.
no, they can't. It's the simple answer.
But it's not a coin to hodl either. Like, it's not one to
No.
like, you're not going to hold on to it, and it's not going to 2x every year kind of thing. But
Yeah, it was.
I don't fully understand it.
It was my last video where it's the Matrix orange pill one. That is about the protocol, and I just going like doing that research and stuff about the protocol just made me realize this is why Bitcoin is just so different. And it also, like, it was on a Jeff Booth podcast as well, where another massive light bulb hit, where it was just kind of like he was saying, if you think about creating this system, this perfect, well, not perfect, but like this global free market where it's fair for everyone, it would make sense that other people come along and try to use it and say, hey, look at my shiny new technology. Because,
Yeah.
and he was sort of saying the reason that they can get away with this as well, big VCs and like all these different, this money funneling it into like different projects. The reason they know it was going to work is because most people understand technology, but hardly anyone understands protocols at a deep level. The same with technology as well. Most people don't really understand technologies at a deep level, but he was saying they can just use that because people see things like MySpace and then Facebook take over. And so they're like, well, my Bitcoin's like the MySpace. It's the first one. It's never going to succeed long term. There's going to be something that comes along that's better.
Yeah.
And we've got to look for that because that's what's going to make us rich. And
Yeah.
Bitcoin's already gone to 100,000. It's too late. Like, we're never going to get rich from that sort of thing. So they can just use people's emotions to sell them any altcoin, any shitcoin that they want, sort of thing, because I can see it. It just makes so much sense with Casper now. It's like, the whole time I was just, because I really dug into Casper because it was like, there's so many people going on about it.
Yeah.
But it was just going back to first principles. It's like, but it's not as decentralized and secure as you keep saying.
I can tell you've been listening to Jeff Booth. Like, I can tell you've been listening to Jeff. That's what he's. Let's go back to first principles. Let's just go back to first principles.
But that's what I keep trying to do, though. Like,
the natural state of the free market.
Exactly.
It's deflation.
But that's the thing that just, it was like the light bulb was like, this is what's happening. It's just fancy tech jargon and fancy, there's like marketing behind it, and people are like, no, but it is decentralized, and there isn't one team that's doing it or whatever. It's like, well, for a start, it's got a roadmap. How is it possible to have a roadmap if it's not centralized like a plan in some way? Yeah, like this. Bitcoin doesn't have a roadmap because no one decides what the roadmap is going to be. It's like they did have, and they're like, yeah, but they've removed them. So, same as Satoshi, like they're not part of it anymore, sort of thing. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like, and what the thing is, the tech is really good with Casper. It does, like, it can do tons of transactions and everything. But just the simple fact is that Bitcoin has so many miners. Like you were saying, ASICs can't do anything for Monero, and that's the point. Is so all these ASICs miners, the billions of dollars that have been spent on miners all over the world, they don't do anything other than mine Bitcoin. They can't just switch and go and mine another cryptocurrency. They can't just switch and change it to Casper because Casper's this new shiny thing. So, interesting. Are all of these billions of dollars that have been spent on miners and all of these companies, organizations, people that are mining Bitcoin, are they just going to go, nah, we're going to go and we're going to ignore this millions of pounds that we've spent on this infrastructure and just go and mine Casper now?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I mean, maybe they will, but for all of them to like decide on this at the same time would just be, is not how protocols work. And protocols come in layers, and Jeff Booth says this all the time, and I didn't really understand what he meant until really digging into the internet protocol. And it was like, I think in that video is even laid it out, is like, it's just exactly the same. There was the protocol first, which was DARPA, APRINET in like the 60s, late 60s for the internet. Bitcoin was the white paper. And then the next layer was like, for the internet, it was, mine's gone completely blank.
It's like STP or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, TCP/IP
Yeah.
and like HTTP and things like that.
Yeah.
That's part of like the next layer, basically. So, and for Bitcoin, that would be like the Lightning Network. There was the Lightning Network, but in between that, there was all the infrastructure being built. It didn't just go from DARPA's APRINET to then having TCP/IP and having everyone use the internet. There needed to be infrastructure being built, like physical cables to like connect
Yeah.
things, and more computers that can handle it, and all of it. That's physical infrastructure that could actually use the internet. The same thing with Bitcoin. It's the miners and nodes. So it started off like anyone, Satoshi just did it on his computer, and he was mining. He was a node miner and an owner all at the same time, sort of thing, all on one computer. Whereas now it's not really you can't just mine Bitcoin from your own computer. And like you say with Monero, they want people to do that, but it's like, but that's actually kind of Bitcoin's superpower, is that it has you technically could mine Bitcoin from your computer. You're just very, very, very unlikely to ever mine it, sort of thing. So it'd be a waste of time. And so, but that's the point, is that you do actually have to get this physical something different to actually mine it. And that is building this physical infrastructure. And then it's providing like electrification in different places, around Africa and tons of places around the world where they wouldn't even set up the renewable energy in that place without Bitcoin mining, because it wouldn't be profitable. So there's no incentive for people to come and set it up there. And then there's like, you can then go down the rabbit hole on how it takes methane and can use that, which is much worse for the environment than like carbon dioxide. So it can go to landfill sites, it can go to oil rigs, and you can mine Bitcoin at places that produce methane, basically. And it's reducing pollution. It's like real world things that are happening.
If I owned a gym, right, what I'd do is I'd get spin classes, right, and I'd hook the bikes up, the spin bikes, up to a is it called like a Jimny or a get what's it called? Those little, the things which you can power a light on your when you're riding your bike. Just powered, but what's it called?
Actually,
you know one of them things, though, don't you?
Yeah.
Like where your pedaling supplies the energy to the light.
Yeah.
I would get one of those hooked up to everybody's bike in this spin class, and I would get it to fuel a Bitcoin miner, right?
Yeah.
And what I'd do is I would have back-to-back spin classes, and I would get them to use their energy, these clients, to fuel my Bitcoin miner with their sweat, and I would then charge them £15 per class for the privilege of being mined.
So when I was at,
that's the revolution. That's the future right there.
I think you've missed a little bit at the end there, but when we were in Bury St Edmunds, there we actually had a conversation about this, and I went to this mining talk. But I think I've thought about this for ages. So my other like side hustle I always had was this home gym website, which took off kind of thing with COVID and everything. But anyway, that I was always thinking about that. I was like, how could why does no one do this? Why does no one like create treadmills and bikes that just produce power? Because everyone goes to the gym and uses them, and you can get like treadmills that just like run by themselves, and it depends how quick you run. And surely there has to be a way. And I was like, this could be massive, because then you could just literally that would save gym owners money. And anyway, but I was also thinking exactly what you were thinking with the mining. But then what if you got paid to go to the gym? So like that's
so your sweat was subsidized, basically. But so you
exactly
say, right, add this thing to your bike and join our mining pool, and your energy that you create with your spin on your wheels. In fact, you know what? This is going to be copyright trademarked by, if Elon Musk is listening, which I'm sure he is. he's going to take this, and then you basically subsidize them. You pay them a small bit, and they'll probably take, fiat or whatever. But then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym on my bike," and you could even do it if you had a road bike, maybe, where you just plugged it into your road bike. And would you be able to do that? Would it run off a phone? Maybe. I don't know. This is tech which is all new to me, but this sounds good to me.
Yeah, but I mean that's how you really add value.
Yeah.
In a Bitcoin world, you're only really going to make money if you provide real value. And the thing is, then what would happen is someone would see you do this, and then they would create a better version. It would get better and better and better, and like that. And then eventually, it would just be like, the more you go to the gym, the more Bitcoin you earn, the more you get paid. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It would just be, and it could even get to a stage where someone could like earn a living by exercising. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you just were a massive fanatic,
to me,
like,
that could be the start
and stuff.
Well, that could be the start of a Black Mirror episode. I can see that, where it's like, "Oh, I've lost my job." It's like, well, have you tried the new Bitcoin mining app where you mine yourself, and then with it, they're just doing like 24-hour runs and just like killing themselves because they need to earn money.
But I mean, I think that's how it really becomes decentralized anyway. That guy who was doing the talk, whose name has slipped my mind, he was saying, I think he has actually trademarked this. So it's basically a way to, I don't know if I've told you this before, but it's a way that you could replace boilers. Did I tell you what it is?
Maybe briefly.
But it's like a miner, which would just like slot in like this. So then whenever you need to replace it, you just take it out and slot in a new one. And that would heat up your water tank. It could, because it provides heat. That's the point of a miner. And he was like, that's where it will become really decentralized, is when people actually use it for its utility, which is heat. That is the utility out of a miner. And then you could just have it in every home that ever needs central heating. You need to heat up your water tank, or you need to have hot water. Like, everyone needs hot water. And even if you live somewhere where it's hot all the time and you don't need a heater, central heating or something, but you're still probably going to need hot water and other things. I was just like, that's crazy. Like, that's mad and you can just see how that's going to happen though. Every house in the UK will need that, like, uses that already, so they need it. And
I mean, you could already do that now.
Yeah, I mean, there are already like heaters and stuff, but this is actually like to replace the boiler. Yeah. And I was like, that is mad. Imagine that, replacing the boiler with a miner.
Yeah.
So not only, like, you could actually get paid to heat your house, or like, rather than, everyone's going on about bills going up and up and up. Is like, this is literally like, it'd be mind-boggling to most people to even consider that that's an option.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if that was subsidized, that would be, but I don't think that's going to happen. You're not going to get government subsidies for Bitcoin mining.
But this is it. It literally could like clean up the world's energy weight, and you could then subsidize solar panels or whatever renewable energy source you wanted to use for people's houses and everything. Imagine if they actually spent their subsidies on that rather than crappy food and all the stuff that subsidies go towards.
Seed oil. In fact, I've just been reading that book, Fiat Food. Have you read that one? Do you know that one?
No. There's Safedin as well, isn't it?
It's not written by him.
Yeah, but it's something to do with it, isn't it?
But he put it out on his publishing thing. That's a very interesting book. He basically goes into why the food is so crap at the minute. And it basically said, well, it goes deep into a few different things, a few different angles, but basically says that one angle is that to hide inflation and to hide the prices going up, they basically just made the food so crap that people wouldn't even notice. And then they just they were like, okay, well, I used to eat steak and eggs and raw milk and all this stuff. And then they would kind of like propagandize people into thinking that that is unhealthy for them and that they should eat cereal and cornflakes instead. So when they did that change, because these subsidized foods like soy and seed oil and sugar and that kind of stuff was so cheap, the overall price of a weekly shop didn't increase that much. So people just didn't really notice. But obviously things like a steak, a good steak, did go up because you can't cheaply make a good steak. So one of like the hidden sleight of hands that they did was
Yeah.
basically just push people onto a crapper food to
Yeah.
hide the fact that the money's being debased rapidly,
Yeah.
amongst other things as well. Like that, it says in there that the guy who basically Mr. Kellogg, who is the guy that runs Kellogg's, he was a Seventh Day Adventist, which is kind of like this religious dude, some kind of like sect in America. And he believed that the source of all illness was masturbation, right? With men and women. And he said that people are getting ill because of that. So to stop illness, we need to stop people doing that. So how do we do that? He thought that meat was the cause of that. Like that the red meat was causing people to get so fired up that they couldn't help but do that. So he had a religious incentive to get people off meat, and he wanted to put them onto a food that would stop them masturbating, which was cornflakes, right? And he basically
Oh, no way.
he lobbied the government to basically do this whole like food plate and basically take meat out of the diet and demonize it and propagandize the people to say that actually cornflakes is healthy and you need to go away from things like butter and lard, and you need to go towards vegetable oils. You need to go away from meat, and you need to go towards cornflakes because this is giving you heart disease and whatnot. So he was like, he had religious incentives and lobbied the government to get all of this stuff changed. So it goes into that deep rabbit hole as well. Interesting book. And then at the end, it goes into how Bitcoin fixes this, which I haven't quite got to yet, but there we go. Worth a read. Maybe we'll do that one at some point.
Yeah, no, that's right up my street, that sort of thing.
Which takes us nicely onto the book we are discussing, Bitcoin Standard. Let me share the screen. Great. Now, where did we get up to? Can you see the screen?
Yep.
We were on business cycles.
Quote, I think, weren't we?
Yeah.
We just got to the...
Was it business cycles and financial crises? Yeah, we did the Hayek quote. Do you want to read or shall I?
Yeah, I can read.
Go on then.
The central bank planning of the money supply is neither desirable nor possible. It is rule by the most conceited, making the most important market in an economy under the command of the few people who are ignorant enough of the realities of market economies to believe they can centrally plan a market as large, abstract, and emergent as the capital market. Imagining that central banks can prevent, combat, or manage recessions is as fanciful and misguided as placing pyromaniacs and arsonists in charge of the fire brigade. Yeah, I'd agree with that. The relative stability of sound money for which it is selected by the market allows for the operation of a free market through price discovery and individual decision making. Unsound money, whose supply is centrally planned, cannot allow for the emergence of accurate price signals because it is by its very nature controlled. Through centuries of price controls, central planners have tried to find the elusive best price to achieve the goals they wanted to no avail. The reason that price controls must fail is not that the central planners cannot pick the right price, but rather that merely imposing a price, any price, they prevent the market process from allowing prices to coordinate consumption and production decisions among market participants, resulting in inevitable shortages of surpluses. Equivalently, central planning of credit markets must fail because it destroys markets mechanisms for price discovery, providing market participants with the accurate signals and incentives to manage their consumption and production.
They're just meddling, basically. It doesn't work. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I
You
really
don't
like
need
the
don't need to meddle.
Dominic Frisby's book, The End of the State, or whatever it is. But basically, the bottom line is everything that the state does has a negative consequence for
Yeah.
the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
Even the ones that it seems like it's helping, like, you know, benefits and stuff, it actually harms the people that are getting the benefits the most because of the taxes and all the other stuff that they have to put in place to provide them, sort of thing.
Interesting.
The form of failure that capital market central planning takes is the boom and bust cycle, as explained in Austrian business cycle theory. It is thus no wonder that this dysfunction is treated as a normal part of market economies because, after all, in the minds of modern economists, a central bank controlling interest rates is a normal part of a modern market economy. The track record of central banks in this area has been quite abject, especially when compared to periods with no central planning and directing of the money supply. Established in 1914, the US Federal Reserve was in charge of a sharp contraction in reserves in 1920 to 21. I thought they were 1913 anyway. And then the sharp bust of 1929, whose fallout lasted until the end of 1945. From then on, economic depressions became a regular and painful part of the economy, recurring every few years and providing justification for growing government intervention to handle their fallout. A good example of the benefits of sound money can be found looking at the fate of the Swiss economy, the last bastion of sound money, which had kept its currency pegged to gold until its ill-fated decision to abandon global neutrality and join the International Monetary Fund in 1992. Before that date, the unemployment rate had always been practically zero, virtually never exceeding 1%. After they joined the IMF, whose rules prevent governments from tying their currency's value to gold, the Swiss economy began to experience the pleasures of Keynesian funny money, with unemployment rates rising to 5% within a few years, rarely ever dropping below 2%. See figure 13.
Yeah, look at that.
It's just crazy, isn't it? So what was it pegged until 92?
Yeah, look at 92.
So what happened in 75? Why was there a little just life? Something had happened.
Yeah, something. I don't know. Do you reckon that was to do with
71.
Nixon shock?
Yeah, I guess. I guess everyone was kind of impacted because it was into 1980 that gold went crazy, wasn't it? From like 70 to 80. I think gold went from like $35 an ounce to 1,000.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, 1992, it's gone from literally, what's that, like 0.5% to 5% in a couple of years. That's crazy. When comparing depressions to periods of the gold standard, it must be remembered that the gold standard in Europe and the United States in the 19th century was far from a perfect form of sound money, as there were several flaws in it. Most importantly, that banks and governments could often expand their supply of money and credit beyond the gold held in their reserves, causing booms and busts similar to those seen in the 20th century, though to a much lesser degree. Interesting. So even in the gold standard, so even in the 19th century, that was the century where like the consumer price index like halved from like 1800 to 1840. And then there was a civil war or 1860 or something. And then the same thing happened again. But even with that, they could expand their supply of money and credit beyond the gold held in their reserves. I didn't know that. Did you?
I don't know if I did.
I knew there were booms and busts, but I didn't know that was.
I think they might have done temporary ones. I mean, wasn't the whole, like, again, I'm no expert on this, but the whole American Civil War. That was
Yeah,
around central
60s,
banking. One that was no,
1860.
not that. Oh, was it 1860?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the only thing I know about that is that Mel Gibson film, The Patriot.
Ah,
But that was to do with central banking. Um, it was
interesting.
this idea that it was just about tea tax and whatnot. It was to do with, because the Federal Reserve, when that was signed in, was it 1914? It says here.
Yeah.
That was the third attempt for them to get a central bank in America. There were two. There
Ah,
were two previous attempts in the decades before that, and I think the whole Civil War in America was about that, as
no
in
way.
not allowing the bankers to have a central bank. Because before that, there were just like local banks. I can't remember what they were called exactly, but just like it was more of a decentralized banking system where each town or each state would have their own decentralized bank rather than a central bank that could print money.
That just makes so much more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because then
but
you're
if
just
but if you're
incentivized not to give out crappy loans and like,
but if you're a banking cartel that wants the power to print money out of thin air, wants power and control, then you're going to push for that central bank Federal Reserve Act.
it's just it just baffles me how people sort of went along with it. But I guess it's just the same even now. Like people just go along with so much stuff that the
Yeah,
government does.
I mean, I've just finished this book called The Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Did I mention that to you before?
I think you said you were reading it, yeah.
By a guy called Eustace Mullins, who was like, I think it was written in like the 60s or something. But he documents a lot of the stuff that was going on at the time, and there was a lot of people in like Congress and whatnot that were really openly, actively against the Fed. But just nothing ever came of it. They were just kind of they were bullshitted basically and just pushed away and pushed out, and the Federal Reserve continued on. But these people in Congress at the time, I'll have to find that book and bring some quotes out because I did make some notes on it. People at the time were calling out saying this is going to completely wreck America. Like, and even in Congress they were saying there's a group of private bankers here that are calling the shots and there's nothing we can do about it. Like, there's a power structure going on here calling the shots, these private shareholders of the Federal Reserve, and there's nothing we can do to do anything about it. They're doing everything behind closed doors, basically. This was in like the 30s and 40s. He was quoting these. I'll have to find it out and we'll pull it out on an episode.
Well, that's literally what the Federal Reserve was, wasn't it? I think it was in 1910 that secret meeting on Jekyll Island happened with like 6 people. Most of them were bankers, I think, just like
Yeah.
random people. And that was the meeting that's kind of set in motion the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
And then ever since then, it's just been private shareholders, no audit, no elected anybody, doing their own thing, printing money.
Yeah, and then they're called the Federal Reserve.
This is what makes me laugh about like this whole like theatre with Trump and whatnot. He's not in control. He can't tell the Fed. He can't tell the Fed to like, he was on about who's the current Fed? Is it Jerome Powell?
Yeah.
He was like, he should resign and do all this, and Powell's just there like, well, no, I'm not. And that's that.
Can't legally do it. Yeah.
You can't tell him to. You can't sack him.
Do you know what's ironic about that?
The president can't sack him because he's not under the control or the power of the government.
So like the Federal Reserve, they get elected now through the president. The president like chooses, however, I don't know how they decide or whatever, but that's who gets into power. So the president does have a say to a certain extent. But do you know who put Jerome Powell in charge?
Was it Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, previous term.
There's an element of that where I'm thinking, is that just like wrestling? Is that just like is that just It's like, right, I'm in charge of this bank now, Trump, Don, right? But just to fool the public, we're going to go out and do a big ceremony where we shake hands and you say that you've appointed me just to keep these people in the dark about who really is running the show. Okay, Don. Okay,
Yeah.
big Don.
Well,
Like,
exactly. That's
and then
it.
we'll go,
Yeah.
yeah, I've just appointed this new guy, but actually behind the scenes, that's not how it works. That's just speculation anyway.
Yeah. I
But
mean, it's almost definitely a little bit of that goes
yeah,
on
it's like wrestling. It's literally wrestling.
because there's no like real democracy or people choosing who gets like to even be in this nominee to like become part of the Federal Reserve. It's
No,
just
it's like it's an elite club. I think I was in that book as well. It spoke about how I think it was that they all like intermarry as well. This Eustace Mullins guy goes into like how I think it was one of the Warburgs' daughters married one of the Rockefellers or one of these kind of
right. Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
then they became like shareholder of a certain bank, and it's all that kind of thing. You don't get voted in
Yeah.
via a democracy, the American dream that somebody gets picked up off the street and can become chairman of the Fed. You know,
Dear. It is terrible when you think about it. It
mm.
really is.
It's a swindle. It's definitely you know we've been swindled. That's it.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah, the term that it uses in the book is plunder. Like America, but even UK and all these countries have been plundered by this cartel.
Every country is affected by what the Federal Reserve does, though. I think that's the
Yeah.
thing that most people do not understand. They think like they will think, well, why do I care? Like, why would I care? Like, if Jerome Powell is in charge of the Federal Reserve, I live in the UK. What's that got to do with me? But their decisions impact every country because they have to, because otherwise, it's the whole currency, like the exchange rate and things. So, if the if the Fed were to slash interest rates, then every country has to follow suit. Because otherwise, the currencies will get either too strong or too weak, and that just impacts trade and things like that. So, like China, for example, they want to keep their currency weak compared to other currencies because then other countries will trade with them, like buy stuff from them. So that's been their advantage up to now. Whereas I think they're in a bit of a transition now. I think they want to like become the big don now. So
Right.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens anyway, like with them, Russia, and the BRICS countries, and
Yeah.
they're all separating themselves from. They have been for ages, to be fair, but like I think now they really are like they're just buying gold heavy, and so
Yeah. I mean, the dollar is just basically backed up by war.
yeah, it's just backed by nothing other than people
It's backed.
trusting it.
It's backed by force, basically.
Yeah,
Like they enforce. They're like, right, you're going to use the dollar. It's like a
yeah.
mafia. It's like you're going to use my shitcoin, to buy your stuff, or else.
What is it that people actually say? Oh yeah, but it's backed by like the government or something. And I'm just like, what does that even mean? Like, what do you mean it's backed by like the government promise? Like, when does anyone ever trust the government's promise or like whatever the wording is that they say?
Well, wasn't it in 71? It was no longer backed by gold, but it was backed by oil. This is the whole petrodollar thing.
Petrodollar, yeah. But it wasn't. Yeah, I get a bit confused about the petrodollar.
And then
thing.
US starts just like
There's all the
plundering
wars and everything.
oil reserves. Yeah, and then I think since 71, which is what 54 years, there's been 49 years of war. America's been at war for 49 years. Out of those 54,
It's terrible. So what I want to watch again, actually I haven't seen for ages, is Jarhead. I remember that was a bit.
oh yeah,
That was a bit to do with that. Like
was that Iraq?
yeah, and it's like, why are we here? That was basically the message that I remember getting from it. I haven't seen it in years, to be fair, but
Yeah, I remember it was good when I watched it. It's a bit old now, though, isn't it?
It is.
Was it
Yeah.
2005, something like that?
Yeah, it must be. Yeah. Around that time. Anyway, back to the book. So, with this background in mind, we can get a far clearer idea of modern monetary history than what is commonly taught in academic textbooks, since the Keynesian deluge, the founding text of monetarist thought, is what is considered the definitive work of US monetary history, the monetary history of the United States by Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz, a giant tome of 888 pages. The book is astounding in its ability to marshal endless facts, details, statistics, and analytical tools without once providing the unfortunate reader with an understanding of one key issue: the causes of financial crises and recessions. The fundamental flaw of Friedman and Schwartz's book is typical of modern academic scholarship. It is an elaborate exercise in substituting rigor for logic. The book systematically and methodologically avoids ever questioning the causes of the financial crisis that have affected the US economy over a century, and instead inundates the reader with impressively researched data, facts, trivia, and minutiae.
Minutia, I think.
Minutia. That makes more sense. The central contention of the book is that recessions are the result of the government not responding quickly enough to a financial crisis, bank run, and deflationary collapse by increasing the money supply to reinflate the banking sector. It is typical of the Milton Friedman band of libertarianism in that it blames the government for an economic problem, but the flawed reasoning leads to suggesting even more government intervention as the solution. The glaring error in the book is that the authors never once discuss what causes these financial crises, bank runs, and deflationary collapses of the money supply. As we saw from the discussion of the Austrian business cycle theory, the only cause of an economy-wide recession is the inflation of the money supply in the first place. Relieved of the burden of understanding the cause, Friedman and Schwartz can then safely recommend the cause itself as the cure. Governments need to step in to aggressively recapitalize the banking system and increase liquidity at the first sign of economic recession. You can begin to see why modern economists loathe understanding logical causality so much. It would debunk almost all their solutions. Friedman and Schwartz begin their book in the year 1867, so that when analysing the causes of the recession of 1873, they completely ignore the small matter of the US government's printing of greenbacks to finance the Civil War, which was the ultimate cause of that recession. This is a pattern that will recur throughout the book. Yeah, so it was around that time when there was the Civil War.
Yeah, I think that was it Lincoln around that time, but he got assassinated. But I thought he got assassinated for printing greenbacks because that was a different currency outside of the dollar, and the banking cartel didn't like it. But they're saying here that this may have caused the recession. I don't know. I don't know much about that period, to be honest.
Yeah, I do need to look into that a bit more. But yeah, I know from like, it was about 1820 to 1860, the purchasing power just was getting way better for everyone.
The government's printing of greenbacks to finance the Civil War. So the Civil War was already going on. And if that was about central banking, then do you reckon he was starting to... Well, the government was printing their own money outside of the bank. I don't know. This is something to dive into, I think, at some point. Maybe he goes into it.
Yeah, maybe. But I know the point here is that they just overlook these facts and just give their side of the argument. It's like, oh yeah, we need central planning to like help prevent these, whereas it forgets to say, oh yeah, it's actually our printing that's caused it.
Yeah, exactly.
Friedman and Schwartz barely discussed the causes of the 1893 recession, alluding to a drive for silver due to gold not being sufficient to cover the monetary needs of the economy, and then inundating the reader with trivia about the recession in that year. They failed to mention the Sherman Silver Purchase Act of 1890 approved by the US Congress, which required the US Treasury to buy large quantities of silver with a new issue of Treasury notes. Seeing as silver has been almost entirely demonetized worldwide at that point, people who held silver or treasury notes sought to convert them to gold, leading to a drain on the Treasury's gold reserves. Effectively, the Treasury had engaged in a large, misguided dose of monetary expansionism by increasing the money supply to try to pretend that silver was still money. All that did was devalue US Treasury notes, creating a financial bubble which crashed as withdrawals of gold accelerated. Any history book of that period could make this clear to anyone with a cursory understanding of monetary theory, but Friedman and Schwartz impressively avoid any mention of this. The book's treatment of the 1920 recession ignores the large dose of monetary expansion that had happened to finance the US entry into World War I. Despite not mentioning it in their analysis, their data tells you that there was a 115% increase in the money stock between June 1914 and May 1920. That's crazy. So their data even says it, but they don't mention it. Only 26% of that increase was due to increases in gold holdings, meaning that the rest was driven by the government, banks, and the Federal Reserve. This was the central cause of the 1920 depression, but this too goes unmentioned.
So they basically they had 26% of new actual sound money going in, and then 100%, so basically doubled the entire money supply in 6 years.
So there was a 115% increase in the money stock, but only 26% of that was due to increases in gold.
So about 90% was just print.
Sounds about right.
So they almost just doubled it in 6 years.
Well, yeah, like obviously the UK lost out heavily during that time because they were basically buying stuff with their gold reserves. So their gold reserves got depleted at that time. And then also there were money printing and probably much worse. But the US was actually one of the beneficiaries really of the wars, really, because people just kept buying it. So they did get 26% increase in sound money in gold.
Yeah.
And I think it was even more in the next one, you might say, actually. Most curiously, however, is how they completely ignore the recovery from the depression of 1920 to 21, which was termed the last natural recovery to full employment by economist Benjamin Anderson, where taxes and government expenditures were reduced and wages were left to adjust freely, leading to a swift return to full employment in less than a year. The 1920 depression saw one of the fastest contractions of output in American history, 9% drop in a 10-month period from September 1920 to July 1920-21. And also the fastest recovery. In other depressions, the Keynesians and monetarists injecting liquidity, increasing the money supply, and increasing government spending, the recovery was slower. While everyone tries to learn the lesson of the Great Depression, mainstream economics textbooks never mention the 1920 depression and never try to learn why it is that this depression was so quick to recover. The president at the time, Warren Harding, had a strong commitment to free markets and refused to heed the call of interventionist economists. That's interesting. The malinvestments were liquidated and the labor and capital employed in them was really allocated to new investments very quickly. Unemployment soon returned to normal levels precisely as a result of the absence of government intervention to deepen the distortions it had caused in the first place. This is the glaring opposite of everything Friedman and Schwartz recommended, and so it, too, does not even get a mention in their work. The most famous chapter of the book, and the only one that anyone seems to have read, is Chapter 7, which focuses on the Great Depression. The chapter begins after the stock market crash of October 1929, while chapter 6 ends in the year 1921.
So they skipped that.
Skip those 8 years. The entirety of the period from 1921 to October 1929, which would have to contain any cause of the Great Depression, is not deemed worthy of a single page of the 888 pages in the book.
Interesting.
Only briefly, Friedman and Schwartz
So they must know then, obviously. Otherwise, they just try and worm their way around it. Yeah.
Well, it's just like if that was the one thing that they missed,
yeah, exactly.
then fine. But when you combine it to the 1920 depression, the one in 1860s, it's like it's not coincidence that they're missing these things out. Only briefly, Friedman and Schwartz mentioned that the price level had not risen too quickly during the 1920s, and thus conclude that the period was not inflationary, and so the causes of the depression could not have been inflationary. But the 1920s witnessed very fast economic growth, which would lead to a drop in prices. There was also heavy monetary expansion caused by the US Federal Reserve, attempting to help the Bank of England stem the flow of gold from its shores, which was in turn caused by the Bank of England inflating instead of letting wages adjust downward. The net effect of a rise in the money supply and fast economic growth was that the price level did not rise a lot, but that asset prices rose heavily, mainly housing and stocks. The increased money supply had not translated to a rise in consumer good prices because it had mainly been directed by the Federal Reserve to stimulate the stock and housing markets. The money supply expanded by 68.1% over the period of 1929 to 21 to 29, while the gold stock only expanded by 15%. It is this increase in the dollar stock, beyond the stock of gold, which is the root cause for the Great Depression. The honourable mention has to go to the father of the monetarists, Irving Fisher, who spent the 1920s engaged in the scientific management of the price level. Fisher had imagined that as the United States was expanding the money supply, his extensive data collection and scientific management would allow him to control the growth in the money supply and asset prices to ensure that the price level remained stable. On October 16, 1929, Fisher proudly proclaims in the New York Times that stocks had reached a permanently high plateau. What?
Well, that's what we're at the minute.
Yeah.
Stock market is the highest.
100%.
Yeah.
Permanently high plateau. The stock market was to crash starting October 24, 1929. So that's 8 days later.
Literally, yeah.
And
I was just reading today that the stock market is like the highest it's ever been, record highs.
Yeah. Well, duh.
Yeah.
I always think that when they say that. And as the depression deepened, it would not be until the mid-50s, years after Fisher died, that the stock market would get back to the permanently high plateau Fisher had proclaimed in 1929. So what's that, like 20 odd years? It is no wonder then that Milton Friedman would later proclaim Irving Fisher as the greatest economist America had produced. And this is exactly what I think is the situation at the minute. If you, like, most people just think, oh, it can't happen again because since 2008, like, they do things like quantitative easing and, all this like extra money printing. It's like, but just look through his, like, they were still doing quantitative easing at this time. Like, that still exists. They called it something different. Yeah. They're just inflating the money supply or whatever you want to call it, but it's effectively the same thing. It doesn't matter that they can print money. Like, this can happen. We can have another X amount of years where the stock market doesn't reach a high. People just seem to like have forgotten that that's possible. But anyway.
Yeah, good times.
The crash resulted from the monetary expansion of the 1920s, which generated a massive bubble of illusory wealth in the stock market. As soon as the expansion slowed down, the bubble was inevitably going to burst. Once it burst, this meant a deflationary spiral where all the illusory wealth of the bubble disappears. As wealth disappears, a run on banks is inevitable as banks struggle to meet their obligations. This exposes the problem of having a system of fractional reserve banking. It's a disaster waiting to happen. Given that, it would have been appropriate for the Fed to guarantee people's deposits, though not guarantee the losses of businesses and the stock market. Leaving the banks alone to suffer from this, allowing the liquidation to take place and prices to fall, is the only solution. It is true that this solution would have involved a painful recession, but that is exactly why the monetary expansion should not have happened in the first place. Attempting to avert the recession by pouring more liquidity into it will only exacerbate the distortions which caused the crisis in the first place. The monetary expansion created illusory wealth that misallocated resources, and the wealth must disappear for the market to go back to functioning properly with a proper price mechanism. It was this illusory wealth that caused the collapse in the first place. Returning that illusory wealth to its original location is simply reassembling the house of cards again and preparing it for another bigger and stronger fall. Sounds identical to 2000 and 2008.
Yep.
And then where we are now. Having summarily dismissed the era leading up to 1929 as having anything to do with the stock market crash, Friedman and Schwartz then conclude that it was merely the Fed's reaction to the crash which caused it to turn into a Great Depression. Had the Federal Reserve opened the monetary spigots to drench the banking system with liquidity, they argue, then the stock market losses would have been largely inconsequential to the wider economy and there would not have been a larger depression.
So they should have printed more money.
Yeah, 100%.
Just print more, and then
it wouldn't have been an issue.
It would have been inconsequential.
The fact that the Fed was in fact expansionary in response to the crisis is ignored in the deluge of data. While the Federal Reserve did attempt to alleviate the liquidity shortages in the banking sector, it could not stem the collapse, not because of a shortage of resolve, but rather due to the economy-wide collapse of misallocated capital investments and the heavily interventionist policies discussed in Chapter 4. 3 important questions remain unanswered in this gigantic work, exposing a glaring hole in its logic. First, why is there no comparison of the 1920 and 1929 depressions? The former didn't last long enough, even though the Fed did not intervene in the way the authors recommend. Second, why is it that the United States had never suffered a financial crisis in the 19th century during the period when there was no central bank, except in the 2 instances when Congress had directed the Treasury to act like a central bank? During the Civil War, when the printing of the greenbacks, and in 1890 after the monetization of silver. Third, and most tellingly, how did the United States manage one of its longest periods of sustained economic growth without any financial crisis between 1873 and 1890, where there was no central bank at all, and the money supply was restricted, and the price level continued to drop? Friedman and Schwartz only mentioned this era in passing, remarking that the economy grew impressively in spite of the price level dropping, without caring to comment on how such a fact flies in the face of their price level drop phobia.
Here's the thing. These bankers, they're not daft, right? They're not stupid, are they? They're not going, if we just print a load of money out of thin air, we're going to cause some boom and bust cycles. Like, that's what they do. So they can plunder the actual assets like gold and silver and all that stuff. Like, that's their whole scam. They're not stupid.
It's just the way that
They know
they
what they're
hide
doing.
it. They just hide it in
They,
888 pages of waffle.
yeah, like
And
this.
it's just too complex for you guys to understand.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but I mean, if any like citizen or whatever, any average Joe is like, oh man, these bankers must be really incompetent and stupid. There keeps being like recessions and economic like hardships. Like they must not know what they're doing. No, they know exactly what they're doing. They're plundering your wealth, and this is how they do it. And they do it. They've been doing it for hundreds of years. They're very good at it.
Yeah.
Like quite obviously, like this is their whole. This is their scam.
Yeah.
You know. There we go.
Just you saying that though, like the plundering your wealth so that they can, what did you say, to accumulate more gold and
More assets, more actual assets. Like
yeah,
when these countries, I mean, here's the thing: if you take out a loan, say you get a mortgage or whatever, and you can't pay the bank, what do the bank do? They come and take your stuff. They take your house. They take your assets, your collateral, right? Imagine that on a country scale. Like if you have bankrupted, or the bankrupted country, but if you have printed a country's wealth and you've lent that wealth to them at interest, right? And then they can't pay that loan off. What they're going to take when you go bankrupt as a country, they're going to take all of your resources, your gold, like that's going to go into the bank's hands, which is a private company. It's a plunder. It's a massive scale plunder. This is why all the countries are bankrupt, like because of this scam.
we kind of
They take the currency out of the hands of the government and the people, put it in a central bank, and then the central bank lends the currency back to the government at interest, so they'll never be able to pay it off. And when eventually they get to, these boom and bust cycles, these banks come in and they buy everything up at, bargain prices, and then they own that. And each time these cycles happen, they own a little bit more of the real assets, which is, the land, the gold, the silver, the whatever. So each time these cycles happen, there's a little bit more power grab. A little bit more power grab. It's a scam, but it's an age-old scam. We're just seeing it on a mass scale,
I just think
on a nation scale.
I think that's where a massive opportunity is, though, as well, just for like normal, regular people. Like, if you understand this, then this next time that it happens, just being aware of that, then being able to like buy up assets cheaper is potentially a massive advantage, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And just, I know everyone that I speak to that's within Bitcoin is so anti-cash and like the US dollar, because we all know where it's going. But that doesn't mean there's like patches of time where it's not useful to have. And I'm not saying to sell Bitcoin, because I think that's a terrible idea. Like just keep your Bitcoin stack, sort of thing. But there's nearly always something else that someone can sell, or something else that people can like hold on to cash with or whatever. Like there's a lot of people will have, whether it is a fancy watch or something like that, I feel like this is that sort of time. We're in that time frame now. You just look at like really smart investors as well. Like Warren Buffett has about a third, I think, of his wealth now in cash, sitting in cash. He's not an idiot. There's reasons for this. Like I think I showed on another podcast. Like just if you just look at charts at the minute, they are going crazy. Everything, literally everything is, and it's like this. I just don't feel like you can get much more of a warning sign. Like we are now in that window for Bitcoin as well, of where every 4 years on clockwork, 2013, 17, 21, we're now 25. In quarter four, so far, that has been the peak. I'm not saying that it's going to be the peak like right now. It could still have a massive blow off top or something, but are we just going to completely bet against that now? You know, and I keep hearing it all the time now. It's like, it's the end of the 4-year cycles. It's like, that's exactly what you would expect to hear around this time. Like, if people weren't saying that, then I would be like, maybe this is the end. But it's becoming more and more common to hear that. And it's like, I don't buy it at all. You know, it's just, we're just going to like abandon this idea of cycles happening. Like, they're just going to keep printing and it's just going to go up. It doesn't work like that. Like, as he's showing here, it's the printing that causes these crashes. And so we've had an insane amount of printing in 2020. It's like, and there wasn't like, and then it was like, oh no, but there was that little, 20% dip or whatever. It was like, no, people weren't even going to work or doing anything, and the stock market was going to the all-time highs. Like, that's not a crash. That's not like a recession, or that was just a little blip. But yeah, anyway.
So how long we got?
It's impossible to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's before, before 2026, like in months.
Whereas, interesting.
Whereas, like, most people, like, oh no.
What do you think it would look like?
Again, it's just speculation, so it's really hard to say. But yeah, I think everything is the everything bubble, and I think that everything bubble is going to burst, and we're going to have. If you look at 2008, it's about a year. 2000, 99, 2000, very similar as well. Like, if you look at more recent recession type periods, it's been about a year of brutalness, and people are like, oh yeah, but that's not that long, or that's not that bad. But a year is a really long time when things are brutal. And I think there would be an insane amount of job losses and unemployment, and because in my adult life and your adult life as well, we've never actually really lived through this. Like 2008, I would have been in like 19. So I was at uni at the time, and you're in your own little bubble at uni. Like, it doesn't really even, you don't even realize there's a real world sort of thing. So because we've not really seen it, I think people are very like wishy-washy about it, and like,
bit blasé,
yeah, exactly. Whereas I think it could be that when that happens, it's everything. Like, I've spoke about this before as well, the debt spiral, and like, it will just be all of this debt that is piled up. As soon as just one or two, or like, a couple of big ones can't get refinanced, that means then they have to sell assets, which then plummets the asset prices, which then has a knock-on effect for someone else who's trying to get a refinance, and all of this like debt roll up and the fancy terms that they use. It happens the other way as well. And it'll be the same with all the treasury companies as well. I think some will be able to survive and weather it out, whereas a lot of them won't have a choice. They won't have taken out the leverage wisely or over a long enough time or whatever it is, or just won't understand what Bitcoin is and paper hands it, and but it would just be everything, like, gold as well. People are like, oh yeah, but gold is the hedge against all this stuff, which is why it's going crazy like it is now. But when those things, if you look at 2008, it's the same there. Gold did have a massive rally up until like 2011, like after. But if you look when it actually happened, gold does like fall off first, sort of thing. So yeah. Anyway, should I just finish this little bit?
Yeah, finish. Almost there.
As Rothbard explained, there is nothing inherent about the workings of a market economy that will create a persistent problem of unemployment. The normal workings of a free market will witness many people lose or quit their jobs. And so let me read that again. As Rothbard explains, there is nothing inherent about the workings of a market economy that will create a persistent problem of unemployment. normal workings of a free market will witness many people lose or quit their jobs, and many businesses will go bankrupt or shut down for a wide variety of reasons. But these job losses will roughly cancel out with newly created jobs and businesses, leading to a negligibly small number of people being involuntarily unemployed at any point in time, as was the case during the years in which the gold standard was not abused in the 19th century, and as was the case with Switzerland pre-1992, when a central bank manipulates the money supply and interest rate does it become possible for large-scale failures across entire sectors of the economy to happen at the same time, causing waves of mass layoffs in entire industries, leaving a large number of workers jobless at the same time, with skills that are not easily transferable to other fields. As Hayek put it, the cause of waves of unemployment is not capitalism, but governments denying enterprise the right to produce good money. And that's exactly what I was saying there. Like it will be waves of unemployment. It will be mass unemployment. It's not just one of your mates out of like 20 has lost their job, you know.
It'll be whole industries.
Yeah. And I just think most people can't see that happening at the minute. I think they're aware of like, you just combine it with like AI and how that's taken over so much. It just always looks obvious to me, but maybe I keep trying to like find other, like the opposite of what I'm thinking to try and like balance myself out with it. So I don't like do anything stupid. Don't know what that would be, but like as in, yeah.
Well, as it said in that end bit, people blame capitalism, but it's not. It's the printing press.
Crony capitalism.
Yeah. It's the theatre system. Foundational issue.
Because we're not in an actual capitalism society.
Free market.
It's not a free market, yeah. We never have been. I think that's the bit I think that's probably the main thing that I think most people struggle with, from what I found when I speak to people about it. Or they're sort of like, so what? They don't understand why that's a problem. Or they just don't understand. They don't think it's possible to have a free market.
Yeah.
They think, because it's never happened before. So why would it be possible, sort of thing? So, yeah.
And the natural state of the free market is
deflation.
There we go. Should we call it a day?
Yes.
We're almost halfway through the book now, which is good.
Getting there.
Should we do some shout outs? Where can people find you?
Bitcoin Straight Up.
Yep. Find me on The Road to One Bitcoin. We're also on Noster now, the huddling room at Noster. If you want to follow us on that.
Nice.
That'll be good. And that's it. See you later.
See ya. Bye.